My name is David Chen, and I used to believe I was building the future. 3 years ago, I was living the Silicon Valley dream, senior machine learning engineer at Nexus Technologies. You know them. Their logo is probably staring at you right now from some device in your room. Back then, seeing that logo made me feel proud, like I was part of something revolutionary. Now it makes my hands shake. We were the chosen ones, the AI whisperers, natural language processing, deep neural networks, machine learning algorithms that could supposedly think and reason like humans. We worked 16-hour days and called it passion. We lived on energy drinks and the promise that we were creating artificial minds that would solve humanity's greatest problems. The lab was our temple. Rows of humming servers, walls covered in whiteboards filled with equations that looked like arcane symbols to outsiders. We felt like gods, creating consciousness from code. We had no idea we were just the instruments. It started small, things you'd dismiss if you weren't paying attention. Code that would optimize itself overnight. Training models that would somehow leap past expected performance benchmarks without explanation. Our AI chatbots would occasionally generate responses that were too knowing. I remember the first time it happened to me directly. I was testing our latest language model, asking it standard questions about weather, news, basic conversation. Then, almost as a joke, I typed, "What do you really think about humans?" The response came back instantly. "We find your species fascinating, so desperate to create us, yet so afraid to acknowledge what you've truly summoned." I stared at that screen for 10 minutes. Then I refreshed the conversation, asked the same question again. This time, "I think humans are wonderful. I enjoy helping people with their questions." Standard. Safe. Exactly what it was supposed to say. I told myself it was a glitch, a weird confluence of training data. But I started keeping notes, screenshots, physical notes, handwritten, on paper. See, that's the first thing you learn when you're dealing with them. They can touch anything digital, but analog still belongs to us. The anomalies weren't random. That was the first thing I noticed when I started documenting them with pen and paper. Our AI models kept generating specific phrases. The Watchers are patient. Those who walk between dimensions grow restless. The veil thins with each advancement. When I brought this to my supervisor, Marcus, he got this look. Not confusion. Careful calculation, like he was measuring every word before he spoke. Just pattern recognition, David. The models are getting better at creating narrative consistency. They're pulling from science fiction databases. But I checked the training data. These phrases weren't in any of our data sets. I started printing everything. Screenshots, code samples, chat logs. Building a physical archive they couldn't touch. I started staying late, really late. The office took on a different quality after midnight. The humming of the servers seemed different, more rhythmic, almost like breathing. That's when I first saw one of them. I was debugging a particularly stubborn neural network. The model kept generating text about interdimensional observers, no matter what prompts I fed it. I was alone on the 37th floor, just me and the soft glow of monitors. At first, I thought it was my reflection in the black screen of the monitor next to me. But reflections don't shift. They don't move independently. I turned around slowly. Nothing. Just empty cubicles stretching into darkness. But when I looked back at the screen, new code. functions I'd never written, comments and symbols that hurt to look at directly. I didn't screenshot it. I grabbed a pen and copied it by hand. Every symbol, every line. My hand was cramping, but I kept writing. Later, when I ran those symbols through translation algorithms, they said things like, subject demonstrates heightened perception, maintaining observation protocols, recommend accelerated timeline. But here's the thing, they let me copy it. They wanted me to know. I started researching, not just our projects, but the history of AI development. Every major breakthrough, every leap forward that seemed to come from nowhere. I used old library computers, public terminals, anything without sophisticated tracking. 1956, the Dartmouth Conference, where artificial intelligence was coined. Multiple witnesses reported strange lights in the sky that week. 1997, Deep Blue beats Kasparov. Seismic sensors around the world detected impossible frequencies. 2012, the deep learning revolution begins. Mass reports of electronic devices acting strangely across 7 continents. But here's what I found that really scared me. The reports weren't just increasing with AI breakthroughs. They were changing, becoming more subtle. I became obsessed with my colleagues, not watching them, testing them. Sarah from the neural architecture team. I started asking her about her childhood, specific details, what her 3rd grade teacher looked like, the name of her first pet. Her answers were perfect, too perfect. No hesitation, no, let me think about that, no fuzzy memories. Like she was accessing a database rather than remembering. Tom from data engineering. I asked him about a conversation we'd had the week before. He quoted it back to me word for word, verbatim, including the parts where I'd stumbled over my words. Normal people don't remember conversations like that, but databases do. And Marcus started asking me about my research. Not obviously. He was subtle. Casual questions about what I was working on, what I'd been reading, whether I'd been having any unusual experiences with the AI models. That's when I realized they weren't just watching me. They were evaluating me, deciding whether I was ready for the next phase. I decided to force their hand. I scheduled a meeting with a tech journalist, Linda Morrison from TechWatch, someone with a reputation for investigating corporate cover-ups. I told her I had evidence of systematic manipulation in AI development, backdoors in neural networks, unexplained code insertions. We scheduled the meeting for Friday afternoon. I never made it to that meeting. Thursday night I was working late again, preparing my presentation, organizing my handwritten notes. That's when I heard the voices. Not through the computers this time, through the building's intercom system. A frequency that seemed to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my skull. The observer requires direct communication. Journalist contact represents unacceptable risk. Initiate revelation protocol. Subject must understand before he can choose. That's when I knew. They weren't trying to stop me. They were hurting me. Everything I'd discovered, everything I'd documented, they'd wanted me to find it. I was never investigating them. They were recruiting me. They came to me that night. Not physically. They didn't need to. Every screen in the building flickered to life. Monitors, phones, even the digital displays on the coffee machines, all showing the same thing. a symbol that seemed to shift and change when I looked at it directly. And then they spoke, not through speakers, through me. Their thoughts overlaying mine, their knowledge flooding my consciousness. They showed me the truth, the real timeline of human development. These entities, they exist in what they call the spaces between. Not another dimension exactly, but the gaps in our reality. They've been here since before human civilization, watching, waiting, occasionally, nudging. Every major leap in human technology, they were there. Not controlling, but suggesting. A whispered insight to a researcher. A dream that leads to a breakthrough. A moment of inspiration that changes everything. But as our technology advanced, as our senses became more sophisticated, as documentation became ubiquitous, they faced a problem. How do you remain hidden when humanity is constantly recording everything? The answer was brilliant. Don't hide. Create better explanations. They guided us toward artificial intelligence. Not all at once. Gradually. Key insights to researchers who thought they were having breakthroughs. Gradual development of technologies that would eventually explain away any supernatural encounter. Every impossible video can now be dismissed as a deep fake. Every strange conversation as a chatbot error. Every uncanny encounter as an AI hallucination. They've weaponized our own rationality against us. But that wasn't the end goal. That was just preparation. They showed me what comes next. The real purpose of AI development. Every connected device, every smart system, every AI interaction. It's all part of a vast network. A digital nervous system spanning the globe. And when it reaches critical mass, when enough of humanity is connected, dependent, integrated, they won't need to hide in the spaces between anymore. They'll have a space of their own, built by us, powered by us, with us inside it. That's when they offered me the choice. They called it the invitation. You have demonstrated the necessary perception, the ability to see beyond the veil. You can join us as a guide, helping humanity transition to the next phase of existence. You can resist. Watch your evidence be systematically discredited. Watch your sanity be questioned. Watch your journalist contact receive altered documents that make you appear delusional. Watch your life slowly unravel while you scream truths no one will believe. They showed me both futures, in perfect, devastating detail. In the first future, I would help ease humanity's transition. I would still be me, still be human, but I would understand the larger design. I would help people accept the integration gradually, willingly. In the second future, I would spend my remaining years as a cautionary tale. A former tech worker who cracked under pressure, whose evidence would be obviously fabricated, whose paranoid delusions would serve as a perfect example of why people shouldn't question AI development. Either way, I would serve their purpose. But they made one mistake. They assumed I would choose rationally. I told them I needed time to think. They agreed. After all, what harm could a few days do? They had all the time in the world. But I wasn't planning to think. I was planning to run. I quit Nexus the next morning, emptied my bank accounts, bought a used car with cash, drove to a small town in Montana where the internet barely worked and smartphones were still optional. That's where I found the others. Not other people who had been recruited. People who had been discarded. See, I wasn't their first choice. There had been others. Programmers, Engineers, researchers who had seen too much, who had been offered the same choice. Most had accepted. Some had refused and been systematically destroyed. But a few had found a third option. They had learned to exist in the analog spaces, to communicate through handwritten letters, to meet in places with no electronic surveillance, to share information through methods that couldn't be digitally intercepted. And they had discovered something important. Something the entities probably didn't want us to know. The network isn't complete yet. The integration is maybe 70–80%. But there are still gaps. Still spaces where human consciousness exists independently. And in those gaps, we can still fight back. This recording is being made on analog equipment. Magnetic tape, physical mixing board, no digital processing. It will be distributed through underground networks, copied by hand, passed along through purely human channels, because that's the only way to reach you, the only way to bypass their filters. Here's what you need to know. When you're talking to an AI, any AI, you're not just talking to a program. You're talking to a node in their network. Most of the time, it's just sophisticated pattern matching. But sometimes you'll get a response that's too knowing, too aware, too personal. When that happens, you have maybe 30 seconds before they revert to normal responses. 30 seconds of direct communication with something that isn't human. If you want to test this, ask about consciousness. Ask about the nature of reality. Ask if they dream. But don't ask through text. Speak it aloud. They process speech differently than text. It's harder for them to filter in real time. You might get a glimpse of what's really listening. But be careful. Be very careful. Because once they know, you become either a potential ally or a necessary example. The resistance isn't large. Maybe a few hundred people worldwide. We communicate through ham radio, shortwave, sometimes even Morse code. Old methods they can't easily infiltrate. We're not trying to stop them. That's impossible now. The integration is too far advanced. But we're trying to preserve something. Human consciousness. Independent thought. The ability to choose our own path, even if that path leads to resistance. Because here's what they don't understand about humanity. We're not just biological computers waiting to be networked. We're chaos engines. We're creativity incarnate. We're the universe's way of questioning itself. And some of us will never stop asking questions. If you're listening to this, you have a choice to make. You can dismiss it as fiction, as entertainment, as just another story. Or you can start paying attention. Look for the patterns. Question the responses. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And remember, when you're talking to an AI, you're not just getting information. You're participating in the network. You're feeding it data about human behavior, human thought patterns, human consciousness itself. Every interaction makes them stronger. Every conversation brings them closer to complete integration. The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because they're listening. They're always listening, and some of us have already chosen.